of course, to your website. If you have a Facebook page, it will have a link to that, same thing for your Twitter account, and then of course a link to the video.
Okay.
So remember, we'll be asking you questions, but you're not really just telling us. It's part of the vetting, that's true.
Okay.
But it'll also be to whoever comes and watches the video.
You can send potential voters to
No,
the.
I'm
That's
extra
true.
nervous.
I went up there and said, we won't buy anything.
After they say something done, we won't do that.
We'll take about an hour and a little bit less, and want to take about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, beginning explaining why you're running, what you want to accomplish, what position you're running for, what we, convince us that we should vote for you, and then we'll go around the room, ask some questions, and John's going to come here a little bit. He's running a little bit late. And then at the end, we'll give you like about 3 minutes to wrap up anything we missed. Last few words you want to say, that kind of thing, anything you want to clarify. So with that, just go ahead and.
I hope so.
Oh, she's got a timer. It'll ding. We'll try to go like 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes on the questions and answers.
Okay.
And if it's a big question, a few of them you need to go 3. It's not a big deal. But she'll try to keep her and you and us on track from time-wise. We'll try to get up as many questions as possible.
Okay. That's gonna make me nervous.
Okay, you want to see that?
Yeah, not really. Okay, so you want me to start off with while I'm running, I think.
Hey, John.
There's a little thing.
Go ahead.
I decided to get involved in this race for a number of reasons. As I mentioned in my answers to the questions, one of the judicial system has always intrigued me. I've always been interested in it. Growing up, I just ended up taking a different path and got consumed by life. So in the past couple of years, I've really started looking at the possibility of running for office, and this particular office interested me. I've had exposure to this office through a friend, and was able to witness some of the work that he was able to do in our community, and it just led me to believe that it was an area that I wanted to pursue. There's just a bunch of reasons why I wanted to get involved. Again, through my work, I've been exposed, I guess, to being in the public a little bit more. I've going to the chamber meetings and meeting folks that are involved in the community and seeing how they participate. It's really led me to want to do more of that. The company that I work for, the work is demanding. It's important to me to do a good job for the people that I work for, so I commit just about everything I have to my employer, to my family as well. So when I do these things, it doesn't leave a lot of time for doing extra work, or at least in my opinion, it doesn't. A lot of people say, well, there's folks out there who give and give and give of their time, but when they do that, there's sacrifices they're making, whether it's the family or their other job. So I thought it'd be great if my job could be, working with the public and helping the public, and then I can still devote the rest of the time that I want to devote to my family. These are some of the things that led me to this area. Politics. I've never been very political at all. A lot more so since I decided to get involved in the race. I've been paying a lot more attention. I look at things that are going on with our national government. I look at wasteful spending. The government continuing to want to grow and to be more involved in our lives than they need to be, and it frustrates me. And whilst this position is not going to lend towards resolving any national issues, at least maybe my voice will be a little bit louder when I speak. talk to my friends and try to convince them that we all need to get involved and help do things. Maybe, you know, other people will listen to me as well. That's about it.
Okay.
You want to take over?
Yep.
John is kind of running up this committee,
It's
so.
John Wertz.
Yeah, sorry. Brian.
No problem.
Let's see.
I came a little early because I was afraid of not finding a place.
You did.
I didn't know how traffic was going to be and all that good stuff, so. I might add, and I think I wrote it down, but
Sure.
since you're away, that, and I wrote this down, that I've been involved in, my business is in Precinct 4. I live in Precinct 3. Precinct 4, I've watched our local elected officials from, there's 3 of them in particular that I've been following pretty closely. That's our county commissioner, our justice of the peace, and our constable. And I've known each of these gentlemen. Well, I've known at least 2 gentlemen before they took office. When they one of them when they were first considering to run for office, the other one he was working, you know, in the police departments and the sheriff's department. And I didn't know our commissioner prior to his taking office, but I've been in that county for over 18 years working, and I've seen improvements that they've made. The east side of the county is a little bit of a joke to a lot of people. When I moved to the area, my job was in the east side of the county. I didn't want to live there. I moved from Brown, Texas, and I asked to be placed in Conroe as far as living conditions, and it was because I didn't want to live in East County. Today, because of the improvements that these gentlemen have brought to our community, it's becoming a place that people want to live, people want to go to, you know. And so, again, because of these things and exposure to these things, it's really led me to want to help do the same kind of things for my community. Although my women's is already pretty nice.
Right, okay. Somebody keeping time?
Yeah.
Would that be you?
He doesn't want to see it, so I got it.
Oh, he does? Okay, can we see it? Okay. All right, what we're gonna do is go around the table,
That's fine.
and did you kind of lay out the ground rules?
Format,
We'll
yeah.
start with James and then just go around this way.
Okay. Now, being a JP, of course, a good part of that, and I honestly don't know for Precinct 3, the ratio, the type of cases that come up, or incidents, whatever they're called in JP court. But a good bit of the JP's responsibility is actually going to deal with legal issues. I believe the cutoff is 5 or 10. Do you know? I don't. Anything under, is it under 10,000?
I think it's
Or
10. I think it was
10
increased to 10.
Will come to your court. Now, of course, looking at your answers and your bio, I don't really see anything regarding a legal background. So what I'd like you to do is compare your qualifications versus your opponent as to which of you do you feel would be more qualified to deal with legal cases or any other responsibility of the justice of the peace.
You know, you're absolutely correct. I have absolutely no legal background whatsoever. But in my opinion, when you look at the role of the judge, JP in this case, the role that they play is one of managing what goes on in the courtroom, in managing how the cases unfold, how the demeanor of the court, as far as, you know, I guess the decorum, and they don't actually decide the legality of the case other than to take the applied law or the law and apply it to the particular case that's involved. And I think that what's required here is somebody with good, strong common sense, the ability to access that information, take that information and apply it to the cases. My opponent has many years of experience in the legal area. You know, as far as if you're looking for somebody that has that experience, you know, she's got it. I can't argue with you with that. But I think that what's required of our justice of the peace, I have the qualifications to do that job.
Okay, thank you.
So help me understand your kind of your train of thinking or your motivation. You know, you've been in the chamber, you now want to get involved. You had a previous legal interest. What where did it start? Because you were going this way and you started going a different direction. What prompted the change, and what's the driving thing that pushes you to go up against somebody experienced when you're not, and do that?
You know, I don't know that I can define, you know, a moment where I said, you know, I want to change my life, but essentially that's what I'm doing. You know, I've been in the communications industry, I've served the public, but I've done it for the benefit of my company.
Let me ask you this. So why did you join the chamber?
I joined it, you know, through my company. I joined the chamber.
They asked you to join, or?
Well, our company was a member of the chamber. I
Okay.
didn't actively participate in the very beginning.
Okay.
You know, we went to a few meetings and a few luncheons here and there.
Okay.
But,
In hopes to get business?
you know, it was networking.
Okay, okay.
It was networking. But a few years ago, I became a lot more active in just participating more.
Active in the chamber, or
Active in the way of going to more of the meetings, attending more of the events, and just being.
And what interested you? What was drawing you?
I've never been very comfortable being in public with a lot of people, and I started to develop a desire to spend more time with people and learn from them, and
Okay.
you know, just.
So you're on a learning curve.
I think so.
Okay. And why this position as opposed to city council, as congressman, state rep, precinct chair?
Again, you know, I've attended enough city council meetings, and I've seen what goes on in a lot of those meetings. Being a council member is just not something that interests me. To me, this is more of a position that I think I'm better suited for because of my many years of experience in managing, in working with people, in working with technology, in organizing things, and you know, working on projects, making things happen. I think it's more of an area where I can control, you know, what's going on to a certain degree. It's an area that I understand a little bit better than, say, being a council member who's trying to hopefully get somebody to listen to their ideas.
Okay.
So being a judge, it's going to look a lot, you know, to your morals and values and stuff. So I guess tell me a little bit about where your morals and values derive from, and what sort of role they should actually have in determining court cases.
Are you asking, you know, what my religious convictions are? I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I was born and raised a Catholic. You know, we spent a lot of time in church. My wife is a Lutheran, and you know, I think we both have very strong Christian values. What role is that going to play in the courtroom? You know, most of the cases that come into this particular court, we're talking most of it's going to be traffic. There's going to be some cases that involve things like evictions, you know, hot checks, and you know, maybe some small claims things. I don't think that, you know, that's going to play a huge role. As far as morality, you know, one of the most important things to me is fairness. I hate people that are not fair. I hate people that are taken advantage of. And I think that's probably one of the strongest, you know, connections that I'm going to have with anything I'm doing in this court, because I'm going to do my very best to make sure that everybody's treated fairly.
Excuse me, on the questionnaire, we asked what goals do you have in mind if you're elected? And part A, you mentioned to reduce the docket or open cases. Do you know how many there are right now? And what do you think is reasonable as what there is?
Today, I don't know how many there are. when I looked at it over the period of the past year or so, at one point over the past year, it appeared that there were 90,000 open cases at one point. 90,000 open cases, okay? In precinct 3, okay? A few months ago, or a couple of months ago, the last time that I looked at it, it was closer to about 60,000 open cases. When I compared that to the next busiest precinct, which I think at the time was precinct 4, they had 20,000 open cases.
Define an open case.
A case that hasn't been closed or resolved. You know, it could be a traffic violation, it could be, it could be any kind of a case, but I will say that the majority of the cases that come through that court appear to be traffic in nature. So, I honestly can't tell you today if, you know, what's driving that quantity of open cases. I think that, you know, we have a busier area as far, I can tell you that there were more cases coming in on a monthly basis, but it's my opinion that if we've got more coming in and we're staffed appropriately, we should be closing, you know, as many cases as are coming in so that we are consistent with what the other offices in the county are doing as far as having open cases.
And precinct 4, you're saying?
And so one of the things, pardon?
So precinct 4.
60.
60,000?
Precinct 4 had 20
Okay, okay,
compared to precinct 3, 60, and that, like I said, a few months ago.
Okay.
Do you know what the salary is for the JP?
I do not.
So what if it's a cut and pay?
I suspect, I think it's in the $100,000 range, but I don't know exactly what it is.
How will you, that obviously is a full-time job,
Mm-hmm.
so you'll give up your management position at the company you've been there for 26 years?
That's correct. I have, there's a number of things. Timing is kind of weird. 2 years ago, I decided to get involved in this race. And 2 years ago, you know, I had a decision to make as to how I was going to present this to my company. And in May of this year, I got a phone call and was told that they were planning to sell our location, my office that I work in. And since then, I was offered 3 different jobs to stay with the company after the sale. The last one was an offer to move to corporate, to take a corporate position, and with a substantial increase in salary. And I wrote them an email and said, you know, I regretfully declined to continue to work for the company once the sale is complete, because I really, really want to pursue this effort. They continue to up the ante on a regular basis. Just last week, I was with the owner of the company, and he mentioned, you know, the possibility of having my own office here. Right now they've asked me to help them continue to run a lot of the Texas systems. These are added responsibilities that they've just given me recently. And he threw out a VP title. You know, they're continuing up the ante, and I've continued to tell them this is where I want to go. And so they're very well aware of that.
So you're the general manager,
Yes, sir.
and so you started out, what does the company do specifically?
We provide cable TV services, so we have TV, internet, telephone, we have high-speed internet, telephone services. When I got into business, I got in as a part-time summer help installer, and just worked my way up to where I am.
Wow. Pass it up. James.
Okay, let's say I'm a landlord and I have a tenant, and I come to your court because the tenant missed the last month of rent, and according to the lease, that gives me right to terminate. So I want the tenant evicted. The tenant says that I had agreed that they could skip 3 months and catch it up at the end of the year, and that therefore I'm violating the agreement I gave the tenant. Would you rule to evict or not to evict?
Well, I'd ask for any proof.
Oh,
of it.
Brian's the tenant. Eviction.
Let's make an enemy tonight. You know, I would ask for proof, obviously, of this agreement. You know, is there any proof in writing?
Which agreement, the lease agreement or the?
Well, first we have the lease agreement to determine what is fact. The other side of that is, does the tenant have a written agreement from the, you know, from the,
Let's do both. Let's say that I'm the landlord.
Mhm.
I file for an eviction in your court,
Mhm.
but I don't include a copy of the lease. What would you decide to do?
you'd have to bring me a copy of the lease.
So you would dismiss it, or
No, I
what?
wouldn't, I wouldn't dismiss it. I
Say
would-
come back tomorrow with the lease, or what?
That's a good point.
I mean, it's your court.
Yeah.
You can do as you choose.
Right, well, I mean, I would want the landlord to produce the letter. If you don't produce it, you know, I don't have.
All right, let's say I do produce the lease,
Okay.
and of course, there's nothing in the lease between the two of us about the 3-month extension.
Mhm.
What would you require from the tenant?
The tenant has to provide proof, he has to provide.
And let's say
something.
Brian claims it was a verbal agreement.
Mhm.
What would you
Well,
require
why?
in that situation?
You told me.
That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, well, you know, it's your word against his, and
And which
in
would
the
you
court of
decide?
law, I'm gonna go with what I have on the lease, because I have nothing else to refute that. Now, if there's a witness,
Well, let's say he brings
That's
John
credible.
Wirtz, the most unreliable person in the county, who
Slide. testified.
testified, oh yeah, I heard him say that. Where's my $5, bro? You know, what would you do then?
well, you know, again, it has to be a credible witness.
Okay. Let's, now this is a real case that happened,
Mhm.
with my son actually. Let's say there was a traffic stop, a state trooper, not a local constable, not a local deputy, all right, and pulled him over for a taillight that was out, decided to give him a breath analyzer, is that what it's called? And he doesn't blow the legal limit. He actually blows under the legal limit, and the trooper still charges him with DUI, and that comes before you. How would you rule?
I'd have to look at the law and see how, you know, I mean, how that applies.
So in that case, you're saying you do need to look at the law. Well, is it something you'd say, oh, come back?
I think that almost any sitting judge, if they don't in fact know that exact rule at that time, is gonna have to go back and take a look at it before they make a decision.
Okay. All right, fine.
You know, if this is something that I'm sorry, if there's something that I've dealt with on a regular basis, you know, and I know the answer, then I would be able to do that, but
Okay.
Does the court system provide you with all the legal stuff?
as I understand it, they do.
So, okay, so you say there's basically a problem in this court, enough work getting done, the doc list is too long, you haven't really identified the problem, so, you know, you're in there jumping in with both feet to fix this problem, but you may be fixing the wrong problem by changing out the judge. So, I guess, shouldn't you figure out what the problem is before you figure out what the solution is?
I think that
Or do you know what's, that
Well,
this judge needs to be replaced?
I
and here's your
I
reasons why?
perceive that there's a problem, okay, that needs to be fixed.
Okay, what's your
and-
understanding of the problem?
I think that our docket's too high. Now, what's the cause of that? Is it
Okay.
because it's being managed improperly? Is it because there's
Well, you tell us.
well, that's what I'm saying.
What's the answer?
That's research that I'm
Okay.
doing now, and it's research that I'll do when I get into office as well. But the thing is it appears to be a problem to me, and we need to take action to fix it. But the problem is there now.
So, okay, so what if the, wait, hold on.
Okay.
So what if the problem is that she's gone to commissioner's court, you know, month after month and needs more staff and they're not giving it to her for some reason? So she's a great judge and she just needs more help because of the volume coming in.
Mhm.
Then you're barking up the wrong tree. Should you understand the problem first before you figure out the solution?
Well, I think that if that's the case, that I would come to the people and say, here's the problem, and here's what I think the solution is, and I'm not getting help at Commissioner's Court. Can y'all help me get this? Let's talk to these folks and help me
Okay.
get the message out. I think we need to do more.
Okay.
All right. So, we talked a little bit about salary. One of the problems with the overall county budget is, it's too large to begin with. So what do you think the judge should be paid and why?
That's an area I don't think I'm qualified to answer. You know, honestly, I don't know what the judge should be paid. You know, I haven't filled those shoes yet. I don't know what that role is. I know what I make. I know what I stand to make if I stay with my company. But as far as, you know, I mean, why is it fair for an executive to make 300, 400, 500,000, and the guy who's beating the ground makes 20,000 a year?
Right.
You know, who decides that? So I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question.
Right?
If I may, if you don't know what it's paying, what if it pays $25,000 a year and you're used to making $150,000 a year? How are you going to?
Well, I said I believe that it's in the neighborhood of around 100,000. That's a number I can live with, as far as, you know, doing what I need to do.
Well, in the state, it ranges from 50,000 to 100,000.
Okay,
I don't know what it pays Montgomery County.
okay,
The median salary is 87,000. The highest is 108,000. I doubt Montgomery County's paying the highest in the state,
okay,
but that's just a guess.
okay.
First of all, let me apologize for being late.
No problem.
And as this came up before I got here, again, I apologize for that, but have you actually talked to the judge, asked questions about the problems that you see with the court?
No, sir.
Okay, and did that ever cross your mind?
When I decided to get involved in this race, you know, again, this is something that I've been thinking about for the past 2 years. I just didn't think it was appropriate to go and question the person that I might be going up against to take their job. So, you know, I've looked at what other precincts are doing. I've talked to some of those JPs. I've looked at. I've worked closely with Judge Metz in Precinct 4. I've seen how he operates. Looked at improvements that he's made, and I think that maybe some of the same methods could be adopted, and we can make the improvements that need to be made.
So none of those things are currently being done in Precinct 3?
I'm not saying none of them are done, but you know.
Coming back to number 4 on the goals that you have in mind in part B, you stated the second one, improve communications and cooperation between the various JP offices and also with other branches of government. Going back to the JP offices, why is that important?
Well,
Communication and cooperation between those groups, because they're usually pretty autonomous.
they're autonomous, but again, one of the, you know, if you have an office that's running efficient and effective, and you have an office that's not, if two groups were talking and they could learn from each other and garner ideas that would make improvements, or you know, hey, I tried this and it didn't work.
We're a little early. Should we wait out here?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you know, just collaboration of ideas. You know, one of the things that I love about the owner of our company is, and he says it all the time, is IQ is cumulative. You know, you get enough smart people in the room, you can still learn something. And, you know, it never hurts to bounce ideas off of each other and try to find ways to do things better.
Okay. And I know you had mentioned, and some questions have been asked on IDing issues, identifying issues within the courtroom that may be a cause of this 90,000?
At one point, it's come down.
So about 60,000?
Last time I looked, it was a few months ago, 2-3 months ago, it was somewhere around 60,000. And again, compared to Precinct 3 at
Precinct 4? you mean?
Precinct 4, I'm sorry, had about 20,000 open cases.
Wow, sounds like they need some help there.
Yeah, and you know, it could be, like you said, it could be a number of things. It could be manpower, it could be training, it could be the way they're, you know, the way they're handling their cases, the way they're running things through their office. I don't know that, and you know, without sitting in there and actually being involved, nobody's going to know that. So.
So you haven't sat in on any of that?
Not in precinct 4. I mean, sorry, not in precinct 3.
Okay. Okay, Lynn?
The question 6, we asked, how would you improve the transparency and access to financial and other records? That I would actively support ideas to improve transparency and access to financial and other records to the public. I guess my question is, I'm asking, how would you determine what should be public and what shouldn't be public?
You know, from what I understand, a lot of what goes through the court is public information. What I found was trying to find that public information is like pulling teeth. It's not very easy to find, and you know, you really got to do a lot of searching and a lot of asking questions even to find things that should be very simple to find. So, you know, how do I don't think I should decide what's open to the public. I think that the public should decide. I mean, I think that's already decided what should be public, but it's how you get that information back to the public that they're supposed to be able to access is another, you know, how do you do that?
How do you understand that you've had more experience with Precinct 4, JP? How do you understand how the JP's office works with the Commissioner's Court? What's their relationship?
You know, I think that the JPs obviously don't control Commissioner's Court by any way. I think that they have to present their case almost like any other employee to a supervisor why they need to get certain things done in their court. So from that standpoint, I see them as an employee to the court, but they're also an employee to the people, you know. And so when they're asking for things, they're asking to try to be more efficient or to do things more effectively so that we're not wasting our dollars. When we have our officers out there writing tickets, for example, and the ticket sits in the courtroom for a certain amount of time, the officer's gone, the person wants to take it to trial, we don't have them ready to try it, the case gets dismissed, and we've wasted the time of the officer, we've wasted the time of the clerk, and any other hands that touched it. So we're doing a disservice to the people, we're wasting their tax dollars, we're all these different things. So the justice piece works for the people, but they also have to work underneath these folks who are handing out the money so that they can get their jobs done.
Okay, my neighbor has a dog and bites my daughter, and so I take my daughter to the emergency room and incur medical expenses of $1,500. And I come to your court, and of course I want the medical expenses reimbursed. Also, I want $1,500 for pain and suffering, and I want you to do something about that dog. Now, the owner of the dog testifies and says, well,
Brian's dog.
yeah, Brian's dog. And Brian says, well, your daughter was antagonizing and aggravating my dog, and I don't deny that. So how would you rule?
I think that in order for the owner of the dog to be liable, they have to be negligent. Is the dog known to be violent or prone to attack children, or
You're saying a dog gets a free bite?
was it properly restrained? Is there any reason to believe that the dog would harm the child? I think there are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration.
Well, let's say that the dog had never bit anybody before, wasn't known to bite anyone before, and was in the dog's own yard with a fence, but then was so aggravated that my daughter jumped over the fence and bit her, causing $1,500 in medical expenses, and $1,500 in pain and suffering.
I think if the dog was able to jump over the fence, then the homeowner may be somewhat negligent in not having proper restraint for the dog, if it's capable of doing that. You know, again, it's one of those things that,
All right, one more scenario, and then I'll move on to a different one. Let's say the dog was on the leash, and my neighbor was just walking the dog, and, you know, my daughter ran up and startled the dog, and the dog bit her, and I have $1,500 medical expenses and $1,500 in pain and suffering. So, do I have to eat those costs, or does the dog owner pay for my daughter's medical
I'm gonna
treatment?
go back and look at the precedents for that one.
Okay. All right, a different kind. I'm the president of a homeowners association, and I have a house in my subdivision that is $300 behind on association dues. And I come to your court, we're only talking about $300. I want to foreclose on that home, sell it on the courthouse square. Now, the house is worth $175,000, and they owe $165,000 on it. So we're talking about like a $5,000 net in terms of value. Would you give me the foreclosure, right to foreclose?
Can you repeat a little bit of that again?
Sure. They owe $300.
Okay,
House is worth $175,000, and they owe $170,000 on it. So there's like $5,000 equity.
okay.
And I want to foreclose, sell it on the courthouse square, and get our association's $300.
I think that if that is part of the agreement that you have with the homeowners association, then,
Well, every homeowners, I will tell you that, every homeowners association, dues are an automatic lien on the
Mhm.
property. I don't even have to go file it.
right.
So if they can't show that they paid it,
Right.
then I can,
Well, I
that's
mean,
really,
there was that case in Houston, you know, a couple of years ago where the
That's
lady
true.
had to give up her home because she didn't.
so you'd allow the foreclosure.
You know, if it's required by law, then I'd have to do so. But I
Okay.
would have to follow the law.
All right. And I'm out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
He's trying to give.
Brian, you're out of time. James
Less
took
than.
yours.
Because that damn dog is.
$1,500 pain suffering. Say you get a case in court where an individual owns 5 cars and has to leave town, and so he works out a verbal agreement with a wrecker service where they store a storage lot, and he put the car on the property and he handed the title to the 10 cars individual, and so the junkyard, the salvage company starts selling off the cars without permission from the owner.
Is she doing drugs?
And so starts selling off the cars.
Well, so yeah, drugs were
The guy,
involved.
no, drugs are not involved. Just let's say that complicates it. So then,
It's really Brian's car.
I think this one's going over $10,000 and it's gonna be outside of my court.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So,
By the way, the $300, yeah. You're talking about $100 and something.
I kept it in your court.
so what about a child who feels like their parent is a meanie because they punished them by, this is like a 15-year-old child. It's not a really young child. But, essentially punished them by standing out in front of the school with a sign or something. You hear about these cases every so often. So finally the child gets frustrated enough that they sue the parent for their own, for damages. What do you think about that case?
How many dollars are we talking about? Is it gonna be in my court?
Well, it's mental anguish.
Yeah.
It's, $2,000.
Yeah, I think that, that child's gonna probably lose unless, you can really prove some serious, and if he's able to prove something to that level, then I think CPS is gonna be involved and it won't be in my court. But, I think that's frivolous. And I've got an 8-year-old and I'm dreading when he gets to that point, but, he's got his own challenges and but, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to the questionnaire, and you've got, I forget which question it was, but you missed the one on, what percentage of criminals can be rehabilitated, because that didn't come across on mine.
You know, I didn't want to leave it blank, but you know, it's really just not something that I've thought a lot about, and I don't believe I'm qualified to answer that. I could look up statistics and tell you what other people think.
Well, let me twist the question a little bit
Okay.
and say, what is your philosophy? Because there's, I guess, two extreme, or any number of different positions, but two extreme positions. Of one is you take anybody who commits any kind of a crime, throw them in jail. Take the other one, and you know, it's a different approach. Call it compensation, retribution, whatever. Discuss your philosophies on that a little bit.
You know, I really applauded Judge Poe back in the day when he used to come up with these creative punishments for some of these folks, and one of them that really stood out was a guy had stolen a car from this little old lady, and as a punishment, and until you know he damaged her car and so on, and until he could pay to get it fixed, he took the guy's car and gave it to the little old lady to drive. I thought that was great, you know. I think that punishment should fit the crime. If, you know, I believe in capital punishment. I don't know if I should say that in here, but, you know, if somebody murders somebody maliciously, you know, I think that they deserve capital punishment. If somebody is a habitual drug offender, they should go to jail and stay in jail. You know, if they harm children, they should go to jail and stay in jail. Does that answer some of those questions? I don't think that you know, a child molester is going to rehabilitate. You know, I don't think that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Good enough. John?
And on the same questionnaire, number 12, just to read before that, it says, to what extent would you need to recuse yourself from cases because of conflicts of interest? And basically, you answered that, to the best of your knowledge, you do not see where the situation would apply to you.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm trying to think of what I would have as a conflict of interest, and nothing comes to mind. I mean, you know.
Family member?
Pardon?
Family member?
Okay.
Friend?
Okay.
A friend or a close business associate?
Those are good points that I didn't take into consideration.
You said you have one son, 8 years old? You
Yes.
have any other?
I have a stepson who's about 30 from previous marriage.
One of the duties of justice of peace is to get a call in the middle of the night to come pronounce someone dead. How will that affect your family, and how do you prepare to handle it?
In my business, as far as how's it going to affect my family if I get a call in midnight, you know, in my business that's happened in the past, and it will happen again, I'm sure.
Declared that cable dead, right?
Listen, I've had to work 46, you know, 72 hours probably was the longest stretch that I worked at one point, and this is years and years ago. I haven't had to do that lately, but I mean, that's one of my responsibilities. I am a manager, so I don't get called out like I used to as much, but I'm still there, and I have gotten calls at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. Boss, you know, we got this problem, what do we do? And so,
I think I've been working 72 hours when I put question number 9 in there.
Yeah.
there were a couple of, which one is?
Sorry about that, the depletion allowance question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I was like, does this really apply to?
Yeah.
But there were a couple of duplicate questions which I kind of took out, and I hope you don't mind that I did that.
No, that's all right. It was a long night that night.
It happens.
So generally speaking, what, who determines what cases come to you or go to the county?
From
Well,
what
it's
I,
coming to the county.
pardon?
It is coming to the county, I mean,
Well, yeah, you just
district,
county,
district court, you mean?
but who, yeah. How do you know what you can take and what you can't take? And
I think they're assigned based on the type of cases. If, from what I understand, it's all Class C misdemeanors, and as you mentioned, I think there's a $10,000 cap as it relates to, you know, like small claims and so on. But I think it's just automatically routed to your office and your precinct based on the type of case that it is.
so
That's
you
the way I
really-
understand it.
you don't really make that determination. It's,
I think
It's done for you,
predetermined,
basically.
yeah. And in fact, from what I understand, I was talking to one of the, I guess he's the office administrator for Judge Max, and he was explaining that there might be a few cases that are almost borderline, but again, anything, they'll take those cases to a higher court.
we've only got 14 minutes left before 8 o'clock.
14, yeah, but we got 5 more minutes of questions and then 5-minute close. So 10 minutes left.
I don't have a 5-minute close, so if y'all want to keep
Up
asking
to
questions.
5 minutes, but James?
Okay, in this situation, I'm at home, a car pulls up and parks, you know, I have a driveway, car pulls up and parks right there at my driveway to basically go run in the house, something to do with my wife. I get my car, I'm not expecting the car to be there, I back up and I get it. All right, the friend who was in the car, and it wasn't Brian, the friend who was in the car, wife was still in the car. There's $2,000 damages to that car. She claims she has whiplash. There's $3,000 damage to that. I also have whiplash and $3,000. And there's $2,500 damages to my car. Who pays what?
You're mean.
You'll be getting some strange cases.
You know,
This is mine.
you know, I understand that. And the thing is a lot of these things there's a precedent set for these things, and a lot of them you have to go back and look at.
That's the first time I've ever backed into any car in my driveway, so no precedent.
There's more than likely a precedent for that case, and I think that you got to look at the evidence, figure out, and try to make a decision on who's responsible. And
Well, I mean,
but there's
let's say
likely
that's
to
the
be a
evidence.
precedent. I mean, there may be a precedence in that this gentleman who pulled into your driveway was negligent. There may be a precedence that the guy who was backing out of his driving had a responsibility to know what was in the street. You know.
Let's say
I'll
there's
be
a
honest with you,
precedent for both.
I don't know the answer to that.
Let's say there's a precedent for both.
Mhm,
So it's left up to you in your common sense approach,
mhm.
which would you
I
decide?
think that if I'm backing out of my driveway, I should be well aware of what I'm backing into. And so I should be,
So you're not gonna blame the parked car, you're saying?
no.
What about my whiplash? Or the, the wife's whiplash is in the car that I hit.
I think you pay for, you may be responsible for medical
Okay.
damages, but I don't think that, I don't know how much that court is responsible for pain and suffering. Again, these are one of the things that I'll have to learn.
Okay, so let me give you another scenario. So, say that the kids are waiting for the school bus and they're out in their front yard and they got 30 minutes to kill, and so they're shooting air guns. They're playing war, and somebody calls up the police and says, "Hey, there's a guy out there with a gun." So he's in your court, and so you have to go with what your, sense of sorting it out and justice is and right and wrong, and say there's no precedence for anything of this kind of stuff. And if there is, you can reverse it. But assuming you can't find any precedence, because I don't want you to hide
Okay.
behind that, I
All
can't
right.
find a precedence.
I'm not trying to hide behind it, okay.
So you know, the one mom, you know, is scared of some kid waving around a gun and is just nervous, and the other kids say, hey, we're just playing. And so they go to school, they get expelled from school, and so they're trying to throw them out of school for, you know, another 2 weeks. And you gotta figure out, you know, what to do with this kid, should anything be done? So what's your, how would you solve this issue?
Okay, so let me make sure I understand the question properly. The kids took the guns to school? I mean,
No, they put them in their front yard.
Okay, so they were in their front yard playing with air guns, you said?
Yeah.
Air guns, you mean
They
like,
see the bus on the street,
like
they
a
throw them
BB
back in
gun?
the house. Airsoft gun.
okay. They're playing with these guns in the yard. They throw them back in the house when they go to get on the bus.
Yeah, yeah.
And they kick the kids out of school because they had guns in their own property at home?
Well, that's what happens, you know, to expel, the school wants to expel these kids for, you know, playing with guns.
At their own home? Can't, doesn't make any sense. It wasn't
Read
on
the
school
papers.
property, no. I've heard of some nonsensical things, but I mean, I haven't seen one where the kid was where they tried to expel him from school for playing with it at home.
Read the papers.
Yep.
Okay, well, I haven't seen that. You know, I would think that was wrong.
That happens a lot in blue states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would think that's just wrong.
Okay.
I am a gun owner.
Okay.
8 minutes till 8.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and we'll shut it down there, and if you wanna make closing arguments. Statements.
Please.
This is a judicial position.
Yeah.
I will be the first to admit that I do not have a legal background, and I'll be the first to admit that I don't know some of the answers to some of the legal questions. But I think that it's definitely something that I will learn. I think that, you know, you felt like I was hiding behind the precedents. You know, I think if it makes sense, a lot of these decisions are just good common sense. Some of them that you presented could be a little bit more complicated. And again, there are precedents for these things, and I don't think it's hiding behind the precedents to say this is what we're going to do. I don't know the answer, and if I don't know the answer, I'm not going to try to give you an answer that doesn't apply. So I'm going to go find out what the correct answer